This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, show 175.
Welcome to We the SEs Podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another episode. So today's guest, I had a great guest. His name is Samuel West. He's been on the job for 5 years. And the plan was to talk about how his first 5 years went, what he's learned on the job. But we had such a great conversation and we just couldn't stop talking. So we covered a lot of different topics, including how, what he learned in 5 years, but also how Minecraft helped him land a job, and what a sales engineering title actually helped him build rapport. How he sandboxed as a sales engineer. So a lot of different topics, and that was within the first 20 minutes. And the whole conversation was around 55 minutes. So there's a lot more going on. And I would usually have some housekeeping or stuff to talk about, but it was a long show. So let's just jump into the interview with Samuel West. Good evening, Samuel. I didn't even say evening correctly. Good evening, Samuel. How you doing?
I'm all right. You okay?
Well, it seems that I can't speak, but yeah, this is going to be a perfect podcast for me not to be able to speak.
It's all good.
Yeah. All right. So maybe you can introduce yourself to the folk listening.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Samuel. I've been in SE for just about 5 years now. I've specialized in cybersecurity software. I also work inside the SE community to try and help bring people into the role and try to keep developing that role as we move forward through time. I work with the Pre-Sales Collective, been quite an avid listener of this, where we are now. So I thought it's just a really cool place to come and talk about being an SE and what that's like.
Yeah, we met on the Clubhouse, from the Pre-Sales Collective's Clubhouse, and I messaged you to be a guest on the show, and then 5 minutes later, Greg Holmes said, "Hey, you should get Samuel on the show." I'm like, "All right, I guess I made the right choice by inviting you on."
Yeah, and I paid him a lot for that as well.
Well, I was going to ask you, any idea why he would say I should get you on the show, other than you paid him? Well, obviously.
Yeah, other than the fat check that I sent him, no, I think he, bless him, he's very much been listening to me the past 6 months on Clubhouse, listening to me talk, which I think is hard for anyone to do, but he's really sat through that and helped me out a lot. So I think I don't know, I think he just knows what I'm going through and what we all go through, and I think it might just be an interesting conversation.
All right. And why did you volunteer to be you almost run Clubhouse with Greg, right? You're kind of leading the conversations on there, which are great conversations with a lot of great people on it. Why are you doing that versus trying to do something else that might be a little bit more fun, if there is such a thing?
Yeah, I think it's a few things. I think first, Clubhouse is quite new territory for a lot of people. If not many people are aware of Clubhouse, it's essentially an audio-only platform where there's speakers and audience. You can bring people up from the audience to ask questions or engage. We don't really operate it in terms of a speaker versus audience type of approach. It's sort of a free-for-all. Anyone can come in and discuss. And so I think combined with Clubhouse being quite new, and also I wanted to find some way of jumping into the SE community and finding a way to interact and learn. I just thought it was the perfect storm, and it happened at the right time is what I think.
All right. And you mentioned that you're helping people get into the SE community, or you're trying to help people get into the SE community. I'm curious, who helped you get into the SE community?
Well, I guess like a lot of people, and funnily enough, we did a Clubhouse session on how we got into being SEs, but I think for me, I sort of fell into it. No one really guided me towards that path. I sort of just woke up one day and was like, oh, that's what I'm doing. And I think that that's great and all, but I think so many more people, if they hear about what SEs are up to, what we do, um, how we can help people, how if you have a problem solving mindset, you can really shine. I think when people hear that, they're more inclined to test the waters. So I think just shouting out about what we do and trying to lower the barriers for entry for people, I think it's just there's not enough SEs to go around as it is. So anything I can do is a bonus.
So, and like a lot of people define sales engineering differently. And you just mentioned like if people know what we do, and I have a 12-minute video trying to explain that. I would love to see how you would, like, if someone asks you what's a sales engineer or a solution engineer, whatever the title is at the time, how would you explain that to them?
I've been trying to work on how to say that succinctly for a long time. I don't think I've found it yet, but the way I approach it at the moment is a salesperson is trying to sell something to someone, and that's all well and good. But in today's world, when you have things that can be a little more complex, you're not just buying an orange, or a sofa. You're buying things that are changing how businesses are run. You need someone to sort of guide you through that process, not necessarily tell you what to get, but to help you make your decision easier. And so if a salesperson's job is to get a commercial win, I'd say an SE works alongside them in tandem to make sure that technically you know what you want and you know what you're getting. And on top of that, you can almost align it to a bit how you go to the doctor's office, you're a bit poorly, you don't really know what's wrong with you, you don't really know what it is you need. So a doctor's job is to try and figure out everything. They ask you questions, they try and understand the problem and give you a solution. The only difference is that a doctor is worth 100 times more than what we do, I think. So not aligning me to any doctors of any kind, but very much a similar approach to solving problems.
Well, I guess I could agree or disagree with that statement, especially if you're helping SEs or people become SEs, you're impacting lives the same way doctors would, at least family doctors. Let's just leave it there. So you said it took you 5 years to figure out that's what you're doing. What did you think you were doing before?
Well, I'd always had the title sales engineer or pre-sales engineer. I think once I was called a security engineer, maybe. And to me, like, I was just a technical dude that wanted to help out, wanted to, be a know-it-all and answer all the questions. And there's an element of that in being an SC, but that's definitely like how you start out. And then over time, I'm sort of learning that knowing it all and acting like I know it all is not the way to approach this. And then slowly over time, you sort of figure out what it is you should be doing to make your life easier and to get the job done. And then only up until I joined the pre-sales collective probably earlier this year and really started talking to other SEs, I sort of realized, oh, that's what we do. Oh, okay. Technical win. Oh, okay. That's what we do. Whereas before, very much I was just like solving all the problems I could and trying to get people to buy something.
It's funny when we talk to sales engineers, there's different phases to sales engineering. Like the initial phase, you just sit back, listen to the salesperson and the customer talk, and then if there's a technical question, you interject and you answer that question. And as you gain experience, you start you start asking your own questions that may be technical, right? Just asking them about speeds and feeds and that. And then you graduate from that, and then you start asking vision building questions, and maybe you're challenging the way of thought. After that, you graduate, and now you're doing storytelling and whiteboarding and all that. So there's so many different phases to sales engineering that I guess we should be talking about a little bit more on this podcast. But yeah, a lot of people start off by just, I'm the guy here to answer the technical questions. Call me when you need me. And that's come back to bite a few SEs in the behind, where they just zone out in the middle of a call because, well, they're not talking about anything interesting. And then your name comes up. It's like, huh? What? Huh? What? The teacher called.
Absolutely. I think on very many occasions, I've been that person in my first few years. Oh, we'll bring Samuel on the call just in case they ask a question.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's the other way around. Oh, we need to find something out. Let's bring Samuel on the call. He'll ask the right questions. He'll just help clarify this situation. And if we've done the wrong thing, or we might be going a different direction, he might veer us back onto the path we need to get to a solution. It's exactly as you said, different phases. I think I'm probably in the middle of that, challenging the thought and storytelling, but maybe just at the start there. I'm only just learning how to tell engaging stories. But it's really interesting, those phases, and we've probably all been through them in one way or the other.
Yeah, well, for me, it took me the first phase was just spray and pray. So it wasn't even sitting there and answering technical questions. Just me here are the slides. So we wanted to talk about your journey, like your first 5 years. So I'm curious if you can talk about that, and where do you think that you had the aha moments to switch from one phase to another?
That's a good question. So the first sort of inkling of sales engineering I was doing, I was an apprentice, came straight out of school, became an apprentice at an MSP, and very much you're just helping, supporting, demoing. And then from there, I decided, okay, I'll go get a new role. And they're like, oh, here's this thing called sales engineering. You're perfect for it, even though I'd never officially done it. And very quickly, I'm surrounded by other SEs that are saying, here's what we need to do, here's what we need to do. And so already within a year and a bit, it's gone from spray and pray to, okay, now we just demo. We just do a little bit of discovery. Yeah. And so now I'm demoing, and I'm doing it like exactly that thing that all demoers do when they first start out is, here's 40 slides. You want to see all 40 slides, right? I'm going to show you all 40 slides.
I worked on them.
I worked on all 40. Yeah, you can have a look at all of them. They're all really great. They've got some animations on it. But that very quickly became apparent that was putting everyone to sleep.
Yep. So you mentioned that someone, I'm curious who, said you are perfect for the sales engineering role. I'm curious who that was and why you think they said that.
It's a good one. So I won't name any names of any people, but it was the technical delivery manager at the role I was interviewing for. And I had to do a presentation. I think a lot of SEs do that these days when you're interviewing for roles. You do a presentation. It could be on anything, could be on the product you're going to go work with. Mm-hmm. But I did a presentation on Minecraft. Bear in mind, at the time I must have been 20-ish, and I would consider myself a grown up, but you know what? All my brothers, all my nephews, they're all playing Minecraft. Let's talk about it. It's the biggest thing in the world at the time. It was before Fortnite came out, I think. And very much was talking with passion about Minecraft because I knew so much about it. It was only 4 or 5 slides. Lots of questions were being asked. I was asking questions. And I think that was just sort of the initial spark of being an SE. And across the room, this guy, Paul, goes, you know what? Okay, that could be quite decent. And I think it was purely from speaking. I find it very easy to speak from a passionate point of view if it's something I actually do believe in. I think that helps you a lot when talking about things, answering questions, asking questions. If you're speaking from a place of passion, speaking from a place of care, I think that helps. And so I think there was a little spark there that someone saw and helped me through that.
Okay, so you went from an interview talking about something you love, and you're actually having a conversation with the customer, and you're sharing that love, I guess. And then you went to become a sales engineer, and you went from asking questions to either just sitting there and answering questions or doing a 40-slide presentation, which I'm assuming didn't involve a lot of questions. Why do you think you regressed into not asking questions and not having interaction with the customer?
I think it's such a good, it's an interesting dynamic, because I went from having no guidance on what adding value was when I was an apprentice to I had a technical delivery manager above me. I had a new SE next to me, and we're all just trying to figure it out. There were no real SCs around, but there were sort of technical people. And I think that was just what we did. That was what the people told me to do. You got to think, I've been doing this for a year. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm getting guidance from other people. 40 slides, yeah, go for it. Let's do it. Travel 2.5 hours, get there, show 40 slides, or probably wasn't actually 40. It was probably like 20. But
So
then you come home and you're like, yeah, cool, job done, great. I think that was just what I was guided to be at the time.
I just wrote an article about how mentoring sucks, mainly because of that. Because if you end up with the wrong mentor, you end up going down the wrong rabbit hole very, very quickly. And I think one thing that I want to add to maybe why that happened was you went from talking about something that you know and love to something that you're new at, and maybe you don't know as much and you don't love as much. And the confidence of like, hey, if I ask a question, will it sound stupid? Or will I know how to answer every single question? You're focused so much on the present. It's easy to do a presentation because you put them to sleep and they won't ask any questions, right? So I think there's also that the confidence as you gain confidence with the product you're selling, and maybe you fall in love with the product you're selling, you that feeling comes back of love and sharing that love with the customer. What are your thoughts?
I think only now am I sort of realizing how important confidence is. I've always considered myself to be quite a confident and upbeat person. But then there are times when you're talking about something you don't really know too much about and you're still quite new to it, especially because that team I worked with, they were a distributor. So they had lots of products, lots of different vendors. Yeah. So you couldn't really master any of them. You sort of had to be able to, wing it through a lot of those things. And so mix that in with some guidance, which came from a great place, but might not have necessarily been what I needed. You end up having this position of, okay, I might be putting people to sleep with these demos, but I think I needed to go through that. I think I needed to go through that because I needed to see what that looks like. And then when I moved into another role, I could then see what my success looked like, and I could compare the two and go, that's what happened.
Well, we learn from our mistakes. I compare sales engineering to sports. And I think the big difference between sports and sales engineering is if you're playing like Div 1 with Liverpool and you're making so many mistakes, you're going to get kicked out and you're never going to sign again. But as a sales engineer, you have that leeway to make mistakes and learn from them. And if you don't make mistakes, you'll never learn. So I guess that was, how did you realize that you're putting people to sleep? How did you realize your mistake?
I think because I started seeing other people doing it. Salespeople, let me rephrase that. Your other team members, be them account execs or other SEs, they are demoing, they're talking to, and you'll jump on and you'll help them and you'll examine. I made a presentation, someone took that, presented it to someone, I saw it, and I was like, is that what I wrote? Did I do that? Yeah, I did. Oh, okay, that's my bad. And as I was moving into my next role, where I became a lone SE in a vendor, where I could actually focus on one piece of technology, I could focus on building what I want. I didn't have people around me telling me what to do necessarily. I could sort of just test things out on my own time. And that's when I started realizing short and sweet, a bit more planning, a bit more prep. And I was starting to find that sense of success in demo and discovery, I think.
Okay. So how long were you with the first company and then you moved into the lone SE role?
I was there just for about a year, and moved into a vendor that was specialized in email security, and very much I was there for two and a bit years, and was able to really just try and, I'm going to use the word flourish, but I think what it's actually is that I'm in a sandbox and I can throw sand everywhere, and no one's really going to get upset at me if I throw sand on the floor. So very much I had room to just test and play and work it out. And I think I did that. And that's when I started really, getting into it. I was able to build relationships with customers, build relationships with partners more, because I was the lead SE. You're coming from a place of I say authority, but titles don't really mean anything. But you'd walk in, you can very much be friendly, and people are like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, they're nice. And then I sort of started learning how really to talk about things. Don't say too much, don't say too little. Very, very quickly had to figure that one out, being the only SC in the region.
Okay. So you were throwing sand everywhere and like you're testing theories. Who are you testing against? It's so easy to test against ourselves, and our bias will tell us like, oh, this is better than that. But then we go out to the real world and find out that we're wrong. So who did you get the chance to test against in that sandbox?
Live prospects.
Yeah.
Very much building in flight, we're trying to pilot the plane and we're also attaching wings to it at the same time, and then the wing we just attached fell off again, so we have to build a new one. Very much in the moment, live. It could be with high value tenders, it could be with small SMB deals, it could be anything. Very much we were okay and very much confident and happy to test and see what we were doing. And I think that those 2 years of just pure, I guess it's sort of research and development of what an SE does for me, but with no influence from the outside, like that helped, I think.
Were you ever at a point like afraid that, oh, if I mess this up royally because I'm trying out this new storytelling technique, that I'm going to lose the deal and get fired or anything like that?
Oh, I lost deals. I lost deals because of what I did. And I think they were only a handful, but they weren't too high in value. And I think really what we did was very formative in what we were doing. And I think I was alongside the sales director while doing all of this. So very much had his buy-in. We were doing it together. We were sort of building that side by side. So very much, I think we had the room to play around. We were okay with that little bit of risk because we knew that once we did it once, we wouldn't, like if we made one mistake, we wouldn't do that same mistake again, because that's the real thing. If you keep doing the same mistakes over and over and over and over again, then you aren't really developing. And that was all I really wanted to do, was just be the best I could be. If that makes sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Like I read a lot of books in order to learn how to be a sales engineer. It seems that you kind of did it in action. If you can think of 3 things off the top of your head that you learned during that time that made you a better SE, I'm putting you on the spot right now, but can you think of 3 or 2 or 1?
Oh, yeah.
Top 1.
Slow it down. I would speak at 1,000 miles an hour. This is that. This is how that works. This is this. Just take a breath. We've got 45 minutes. We've got 30 minutes. It's okay. Slow it down. Change the pace. People will listen and engage more. I think that was the biggest thing for me. Slow it down. There were hundreds of things I think I learned, but that for me was the one that made when I finished the call, it felt different if I'd slowed it down to if I'd just gone, it's another 1,000 users. Let's just do the thing we do. But no, if it's let's take the time, let's build it out, slow it down.
Nice.
Very much it felt better when we did that. The follow-up was easier, the end of the call wrapping up was easier. People can follow a little easier. I think that's probably the biggest one. I think there are others, obviously, like use less info. You don't want to overload people with content. You want to overload them with thinking about 1,000 things. I think that first one was the big one for me. Slow it down. Your delivery is important. It matters.
I'm just letting that sink in. That's good. Well, all right. So there's a book, I think, called Think Slow to Think Fast or something like that, that now I'm thinking I should read because of what you just said.
Well, if you find it, send it to me. But your point on books, I didn't know they existed. If I'd have known they existed, I would have got them. Like only now, 5 years in, have I got the books, and they're scattered around my desk for me to just launch into at any time. And I'm sort of surrounded by them. And I wish I had them, because people have already gone through the mistakes that that I've gone through, and I could have not gone through them if I'd have actually sought that out. But like I said, there's pros and cons with having guidance and not having it. The pro is that people have made mistakes before and you can learn from them. But then, sorry, yeah, that's a pro. But then also a pro is that actually they might not be the best guidance for you. And I'm the type of person that's better at figuring things out on my own.
Like, you can read 1,000 books, but most people learn from their own mistakes anyways. And you just picked up Chris White's book, The 6 Habits. When I first started doing my research, I did not find any sales engineering books. So the first book I read about sales in general was Solution Selling. And then I read Spin Selling. And then I found the book Demo to Win. I loved that book, but the problem with it was mainly about the demo and its software. And then I found Peter Cohen's book, Great Demo. Again, all about demo. And where, like, in my role, like where you were saying that it might not be the best like places to learn, I barely did. Most of my selling came from the discovery, and not many people talked about discovery. Demo to Win did have some stuff. So we all learn from our mistakes better than we learn from books. We all learn from our experience. Because if someone says if information was everything we needed, everybody would be a millionaire with 6-pack abs, right?
Yeah, I wish.
Yeah, I'm not a millionaire or have a 6-pack ab, although I have the information. You make it sound like being a solo engineer in a company like a beautiful thing. I'm assuming there were some challenges.
Oh, hundreds. It is a very enjoyable experience, being able to sort of find your own path, and I think it gave me some experiences that I don't think a lot of people with 5 years in sales engineering would have. Very much would consider myself quite well versed in how businesses are ran, how software selling works, because being a lone SE and being in small teams, you have to do a lot of things. It could be that you do a lot of post-sale installation, you could be doing support, you could be doing SE, you could just be straight selling, you know, all those things you do in a smaller team. And I think that really armed me quite heavily. But then I went and joined a team where a lot of those roles were already taken care of, and it was quite a shock. I was like, oh, this is confusing. I thought SEs had to do all this. And this is where we start getting into the point of what does an SE really do? And it's only very recently that I've figured out, well, actually, SEs don't do that job. They do this job, or they don't do this one, they do that one. So being a lone SE is great if you want to develop, but not everyone gets that opportunity. And I now, after 5 years, have realized that I lacked a great mentor, and I think I'm finding good ones now. But also I lacked other SEs that were experienced to lean on, which I think now is exactly what I need. It's exactly what I want. It's what I've looked for. So I think I've learned just from that as well.
So if I can understand you correctly, after 5 years of being an SE, you've learned that you need help from other SEs potentially.
Absolutely. As much as I romanticized being a lone SE, if you want to be a decent SE, learn from other people, or at least try your best. You know, not everyone gets that opportunity, and I didn't. But I think it's never too late to start. You know, I very much, like I mentioned earlier, I find myself to be quite confident and upbeat about a lot of things. But even I know that there's a lot of developing for me to do, and I'm gonna develop if I'm around other people that know what they're talking about.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, like if you think about it, tennis is a kind of a lonely sport, right? It's one against one. But even tennis players get to see other people play tennis. Right? We watch them on TV. You play against them. As sales engineers, as a lone sales engineer, if you're on your own, you're never going to see anybody else do the job, right? Unless you have friends in another company who invite you illegally to some calls or allow you to watch a demo. So that's where I guess having people around you. The problem that I've seen when I first joined, well, either company that I'm in, the SEs are still in that phase one. Let me sit back and answer technical questions or do the spray and pray methodology. And they were all in that bubble. And that's why I started the podcast. I had to reach outside. So my advice to people, if whether they're lone SEs or in a group, have mentors outside your company as well, or coaches, or whatever it is. So
I couldn't agree with that more. You know, I was approaching 5 years. I realized that I didn't have many people to lean on in terms of other SCs that were directly close to me. I'd sort of met a few on my journey, but it was just one day that I stumbled across the Pre-Sales Collective and found that there were more people similar to me doing a similar thing and having very similar challenges, and that's when the Clubhouse calls started happening. And very, very quickly did I realize that I didn't know as much as I thought, but also I wouldn't change what I did, if that makes sense. So I think very much I'm happy that I was solo, but now there's lots of people around me outside of my organization that are telling me a lot of interesting things, like how to scale a solutions engineering, team. Like that was useful for me to figure that out and implement, so very quickly I found that that was of value. I think that's what started that Clubhouse call, was I was seeking that info, and then it just so happens that I think people somewhat enjoyed what I was saying, so they started listening to me. But maybe they don't.
Well, I can tell you, I enjoy attending those calls because of you and the other people. The questions that you ask are great, and the people who are providing input. Although I don't agree with everybody on the call, it just shows me that I have a lot to learn.
And you never will. You never will agree with everyone. There's so
many different ways to do sales engineering, right? And especially in the different industries we're in. My question is, when you were a solo sales engineer, why didn't that company scale up their engineering team? How did you take vacations without backup SEs?
I sort of didn't. I don't think. I think when I was taking vacations or time off, very much it would be in periods of time where I knew that we wouldn't be doing much work in terms of pre-sale type stuff. So you're looking at, maybe the end of, and there could be some controversy around this, but I think that at the end of the quarter, I think a lot of SEs start having not much to do. I think there's a load of things SEs can do at the end of the quarter to add a lot of value. But if you're at the end of the quarter and you're still doing pre-sales demos for things that are going to close, then you're probably not going to close them. But I think at the end of the quarters would be when I could get away with that time. And I think also being a lone SE, I was very much able to implement different levels of scale that I wanted to with just being one person. And everywhere I've gone, right, it's just me. Let's find a way to make this work with the resources we have. And it could be having a Slack channel that governs all the requests. It could be having a ticketing system that governs everything. It could be anything, but we had to make do with what we had.
So you automated some of the things that, instead of you manually going on Salesforce and looking at the different tickets, you just, you have an automated way of them.
Had to. Being on your own, like it's, you can't, as much as you want to, you can't give the 100% attention to each individual thing. And I don't know if that's what I'll be doing in, the next role I'm in. I don't know if that's how it works, because I still haven't learned that yet. But you just sort of had to do what you could with what you had. And all I had was me and some systems, so you have to try and do your best. And I think that showed me a little bit about where SCing might go. I don't know yet.
All right. We're going to have 2 more episodes with Samuel West. One, we're going to talk about what sales engineers can do at the end of the quarter. And number 2 is scaling for solo sales engineers.
No, people are going to start knocking on my door and like, yeah, I want to pay one person X and not 10 people this. How do I do that? And there's no cheat code to that, I don't think.
If you think about it, like if we can scale for one SE, we can still use that system, and when we have 10 SEs, and they'll be 10 times more effective. Right? But if you have a lot of companies that I've seen, when they have one SE, they don't have a system. Just the SE will figure it out. And then they grow into 2, 3, 4, and they still didn't build a system. And now each SE is figuring it out differently. So that's why I'm thinking like, hey, if we can figure out the level of scale for one SE, how would it operate? Okay, now we have 3 SEs. Will it still work or will it break? If it works, let's just keep doing that and have the SEs focus on the important stuff versus looking at tickets. Right? That's my thinking. Now everybody can abuse a system. It's just, you'd hope they won't, because it's better for them. It depends on what they're trying to do. Are they trying to save money or make money?
Yeah, that's a very good, like, what's the goal of this? I think
Yeah.
if you're a solo SE, then the expectation or the idea is that there will be more SEs, you will grow. So you sort of have to think of it of, what can I do now to build up foundations and process? Because that's always what I did as a solo SE. Like, you join, there's nothing. Okay, where's my glue? Where's my sticks? What can I put together to make it work? And you sort of are thinking always, there's going to be another version of me soon, and I don't want them to have to go through this.
Yes.
So you sort of build, and it could be, there's loads of pieces of software on the market and loads of different tools, and people have done it before. I've not invented anything new. It's still a fairly new idea of, one SE servicing 9-10 AEs. Like, how do you do that? I think I saw in a consensus report, I think it was like 3 AEs to 1 SE, I think something like that. I could be misquoting, but I read that and I was like, oh, what did I do when I had 9? How does that work? So it's an interesting observation, I think, and there's a lot to be said on it.
So how many companies were you a solo SE for?
All of them, I would say, in terms of the first one I joined, when they were like, oh, you could be a good SE, there were other SEs around me, but they were brand new.
Okay.
They fresh out of university, never done SEing before, so I would consider us all lone SEs because nothing's really there. And as I joined, the SE that was there left, so very much we were backfills of. No, I don't think I'm that bad, but yeah, they were obviously leaving, so they needed SEs to backfill the role. So you turn up, 3 days later they leave, and now you're like, okay, so there's no SEs. So I think in every role there's been no SE around me, but there have been other people, like, could be the CTO, it could be technical delivery, it could be post sales. They're there. You can lean on them for a lot of things. But I've accepted a new role. Hopefully that goes through okay. And there are lots of SEs. There's like, I think 20. So that's going to be a shock to the system, I think. But it's going to be a really fun one.
Well, it depends on how they operate as well. It might be you're just a lone SE within a group of 20, because that's what I was. I had 20 SEs on my team in my previous company, but they were all outside of Canada, except for one. And I was the lone SE inside of Canada. So you just, if unsolicited advice, you're gonna have to build that culture if they don't have it. Right?
That's exactly the first few questions I asked were, how do you guys sort of do things? They're like, huh? What do you mean? It's like,
we don't.
How do you do things? Like, do you have it written down? Can you fax me the I wish I had a fax machine, but no, I think some of the important questions I've learned to ask, and that's another different topic, like what questions do you ask in interviews? But very quickly I learned, what are the other SEs like? Can I talk to all of them? Do you mind? So I think very much I did that due diligence this time around, but I'd never done that before.
That's cool, man. All right. Can we, I don't know, do we have time to talk about what sales engineers should do at the end of the quarter? One or two things?
Yeah, we can try for it if you want.
Sure, let's go for it. A couple of things. Like, what do you do at the end of the quarter to help close deals that you've already demoed for?
Oh, I take 2 weeks off. I, go to the Bahamas, just sort of, relax.
The Bahamas?
Really. Yeah, right. Somehow.
That seems like hard work, man.
Yeah, I don't really know. Really, but I think the first thing is, you should never be thinking about. I just think SEs don't operate inside the quarter, if that makes sense. And I'll elaborate a little. I very much have been enterprise focused, so you're looking at thousands of seats, and potentially mid-market in some cases. So anywhere between, 5,000 plus, but more in the upper end. So very much sales cycles in the cybersecurity software realm are like 6 months, maybe a bit more. So I think you're not operating inside quarters. There are obviously things you can do to try and alleviate the stress and strain of purchasing, but I think in most cases you're looking further than the quarter. So while your AE companion is trying to close what it is they've been trying to close for the past year, you could maybe liaise with them and understand, well, what are we looking to close 6 months from now? You can help them do that prospecting, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because they're always going to be prospecting. You'll have lead gen teams that are prospecting, and there are ways you can liaise with them and work with them to try and make their lives easier. And if you make an AE's life easier, they'll always come back and work with you, because you're helping everyone make money, I think.
Yeah. So basically you're taking a load off of them so they can focus on closing whatever they need to close this quarter, and you can help them build the funnel for the next quarter or next half. Does that sound right?
Yeah, and not only can you think of what to do in the next or in the future to come, but you can also you can find ways to, if we take closing deals out of it, you can even liaise with the other teams. It could be post sales, customer success, it could be anything. Try and make their lives easier too, because no doubt there's going to be deals closing at the end of the quarter or the end of the year that need to be implemented. Well, I'm as much of a technical expert as the rest of them. It's just that they're really good at actually installing the thing. So how can I help them? How can you hand over in an effective way? Is the handover process good enough? How do we change that? So there's loads of different ways, but I think if you're just looking at closing, there's limited things. But then if you're looking at maybe the future of sales or the other roles, there's a few things you can do.
That's pretty good. I would add one thing. If you're trying to help close deals, so generally speaking, the salesperson is going to talk to the manager or VP or CTO or whatever. They're closing from the top of the chain. SEs can help from the bottom of the chain, like pushing the technical users, like, hey, you still need this. Go put pressure on your boss. That's one way they could do it if they're good at it. Most SEs are not focused on that, so they don't do that, and I don't think it's part of their job description anyways, unless they want to get paid commission, which that's a totally different story.
I think on top of that, if you think of an SE as, and a lot of SEs these days can be considered technical account managers in some sense, maintaining that technical relationship inside the account. The way you put it of selling up the chain absolutely makes sense, because as much as the CTO understands what we want to do in the next 5 to 10 years, they might not know all the ones and zeros of how to get the things done. And very much you're looking at your IT admins or whomever it is who is at that persona level. You'll be communicating with them and try and understand any gaps that you might have missed. Was there any due diligence we might have missed? You can do that because you have that relationship, hopefully. Hopefully you've built that over the past 3 to 6 months, and you can work alongside in tandem with your AE to try and close from the bottom up, in the sort of way you put it.
I found that very useful, because sometimes the user, the manager, or the IT person, they have a mandate that they need to do something, which their boss is stopping them. The boss gave them the mandate, and now they're kind of slowing down on buying the thing that will help them get their job done. So if you're helping close from the bottom up and putting pressure upwards, it's not coming from the SE, it's coming from the employee to their boss. It helps the account manager with the negotiation, showing value, and in the end, closing the deal.
Yeah, I think if you have time as well to do these things, you might have some time to maybe document what's happened so far. Hopefully you're already writing every single thing down that you've ever done. But if you're not doing that, then you can sort of build out your sort of case studies or your war stories of just how did this go down. And that's very, very useful when looking back at what did we do right, what did we do wrong. Very much if you're looking at how did this deal fall through? If you've in your spare time built that war story or that document, you might understand a bit more about what's happened than others might. I think just if you have time, there's lots of things you can do. You could develop yourself, you can help close, you can do so many different things. It's just, what do you want to do? You've got the time. Yeah, what's your priority?
Well, it's kind of going back to the levels of scale. Like, you're doing something that somebody else can learn from, and now you have a process of what to do as well. Sam, I think it's time to move on to the not so fi round. Are you familiar with the not so fi round?
I've never been subject to it, no.
Okay, well, not many people have. All right, so these are the same 4 questions we ask almost every guest, and I want to ask them to you, Mr. Samuel West. What do you love about sales engineering?
The people, the relationships you build, solving problems, and essentially being looked at as someone that can help, not as someone that can hinder.
Cool. I know some SEs can hinder though. So.
Oh yeah, and I've hindered. Yeah. But if they don't think I've hindered, then it's a win. Because I hinder all the time. I hinder everywhere.
Well, like, I guess that's a conversation that we could always have. That's sometimes SEs during their transition from face to face go from being like a little bit of a hindrance where they need support from somebody else or not able to answer the questions quickly or whatever to becoming proficient in doing that. So it's kind of part of the journey. Not SEs don't land and they're just amazing to begin with.
Oh yeah, no, I wish I could say that, but as I've said earlier, I've lost deals, I've been a hindrance, I've been an absolute terrible coworker, but you have to learn you have to learn. Yeah. And either you learn from making those mistakes or you learn because someone else did.
Yeah, and don't make the same mistake twice, basically.
Never do that, or else you're not doing it right.
Yeah. All right, what would you change about the role?
Oh, that's a really good one. I would say that, and I'm trying to do this as quickly as possible because it was sort of like felt like it wanted to be quick fire, but
it's a not so fire round.
Well,
So answer it whichever fashion you feel fit.
Okay. I think SEing is still relatively, it's relatively youthful in terms of, it's always been around in some capacity, but it's only very recently in the past, 10, 20 years that there's been a role named for it. You've got things like demo engineers are appearing, and value engineers, all these different roles are appearing, and they're appearing at a rate which is great and really positive, but I don't know if we've nailed down the sales engineer bit yet. I don't think enough people know about it. I don't know if enough organizations know about it yet. I also don't think there's how if you want to be coached on sales, you can find 1,000 people that will coach you on how to sell something.
Yeah.
But find someone that is going to coach you on being an SE. There's a handful. And that's how you've made it, is when there are 1,000 SE coaches. So I think the renown of the role or what the role does, and or just the idea of it and what it really is there to do, what value it brings, I would change that more people know about that. And that's really why I'm trying to do what I do, which is just try and tell more people about what we do, why we do it, and how we do it.
Nice. All right. Third question. Other than the Clubhouse, is there a resource you would recommend for either people who want to become SEs or SEs that are going through the different phases right now?
That's a good one. Well, firstly, I'd recommend this. With the SEs, absolutely is something that you should be listening to. I'd say the Pre-Sales Collective is a great place to jump in and just quickly ask a few questions. There's a Slack channel, which a lot of people will be familiar with, but I think just that group of people trying to help one another is great. And also my LinkedIn and Twitter is full of loader. No, I'm only kidding. I'm not going to plug myself yet.
You can, but no. Do you actually write articles on your LinkedIn? And
not yet, but there's a few we're working on. But no, I'm not going to plug my own stuff But
I'm gonna
very
plug.
much.
Check out Samuel West's LinkedIn page. I'll have a link to it in the show notes. How about that?
Oh.
You didn't plug it. I plugged it.
I didn't plug it. As
No.
long as everyone, as long as we write down,
Yeah, we have
he
witnesses.
didn't plug it.
We have witnesses.
Thank you. But no, I think definitely this podcast, the Pre-Sales Collective, and yet to be trialed and tested because I haven't gone through it yet, is the Pre-Sales Academy. I don't know what that's like yet. It shows great promise. I definitely want to see more about that, but that looks very interesting as well. Very much a bit like a course or a degree or sort of thing like that. Oh, that'd be cool. A pre-sales degree.
Well,
I'll get started on that.
There are universities in the US where they have like a sales engineering community. African National Society. I can't remember what it's called, but there are some universities that are starting it. So
okay,
step in the right direction. All right.
Yeah.
Last question of the not so fire round. Is there a habit you are working on today to either improve your personal life or as a sales engineer?
Oh, that's good. Yes, there is. I'd say there's probably two. And I know that I have the book, The 6 Habits, in front of me, but I don't think there are any of them in there. It's more that as someone that can be quite technical and can be quite confident and very maybe a little pushy or to the point, maybe is the better way to put it. I need to slow down. I need to make sure that what I say matters, and I want to make sure it comes across in the perfect way. I think the delivery of communication, both in terms of its pace, but more importantly, what you say and how you say it, really matters, both in building relationships with prospects and AEs and your team members, but also anything can be taken the wrong way, especially right now. So you want to be really careful, not careful, but you just want to be confident that what you're saying is truly empathetic and understanding to what's going on, because that's what an SE is trying to do. They're trying to use that empathy trigger inside them to try and understand what's going on and what's the problem. And if you can lean on that and really position something using that feature of your personality and say, hey, listen, I know what's happening. I know your challenges. Maybe I've been through them, maybe I haven't, but I know someone that has. Here's how we solve this. Like that delivery and what you say, it really matters. And I think I'm trying to do that all the time by watching back what I say, recording it. I just like listening to myself talk, right?
Yeah, everybody does. It's like everybody's first hobby is listening to themselves talk. Nobody cringes.
Yeah,
but that's good.
Absolutely do.
It is the hardest thing ever. And if you're able to do that, if you're able to listen to yourself, like I listen to some of the podcasts that I have, and I like to listen to podcasts in general at 1.5 speed. But when I listen to this, I listen to it at like normal speed, and it hurts me deeply. Like at the start of the show, I just missaid like 3 words in a row, and I'm not editing those out because it's a punishment for me not speaking properly. But yeah, like, it's hard.
I think SEs could do a better job at listening to themselves and having that sort of feedback cycle with themselves, because as someone that hasn't had SEs to listen in on what I've done, very much have to record yourself, listen back to it. Oh, do you mind if I record this Zoom call? Okay, cool. Just watch it back. You can watch it quickly, or you can just zip through it. Or maybe if you're on a call and you feel like you said something wrong, just write down 15 minutes in, I sort of said something I don't know if I'm comfortable with. And that way you sort of figure that out. I think that's what I'm trying to do.
I have the toughest brother in the world, so I ask him to listen to my podcast when I don't want to, and he will just list it, and it'll hurt even worse. Than it's like, it's okay if I'm listening to it, but when he says it, So if you have a harsh sibling, you can use. I
have 4. I have four brothers. They're going to destroy me on this one. Yeah. Hopefully.
Well, good. Hopefully that means 4 people listen to it. Pads my stats. It's all good.
No worries.
It is time to move on. So we already talked about your LinkedIn, Clubhouse. Is there anywhere else that people can reach you?
Honestly, if anyone needs anything, any questions or any help, feel free to join us on Clubhouse. That's an open invitation now. You can join the actual Pre-Sales Collective group and listen to us. We talk every Friday. But also you can message me on Twitter or LinkedIn, either or.
What's your Twitter?
I'll make it's my full name but with no vowels in it. So Samuel Joseph West, but take out all the vowels. So it's SMLJSPHWST. Try saying that down the phone to someone.
How about you just send it? Can you send that to me, please?
I'll send that to you. Don't you worry.
And the link to the clubhouse, I'll put them all in the show notes.
Of course, yeah. And then anyone can reach out. I'm just happy to help in any way I can.
Sam, this has been a pleasure, and I hope to do this again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Ramsey. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Samuel, for coming on the show and having this chat with me. I really enjoyed talking to Samuel, and a lot of great insights just for someone who's been on the job for 5 years, and he says he's not old enough to be able to mentor, but he had a lot of information, a lot of good information that can help almost anybody, and I'm glad I had him on the show. He was recommended by Greg Holmes, who's been on the show as well, and he's the VP of Sales Engineering at Aptio. So if you don't trust me, hopefully you trust Greg Holmes. Sam was great. Again, long show. I really don't have much else to say. Show notes are on wetheSalesEngineers.com/show175. If you think this is going to be useful for anybody, please make sure to share it. Check out your YouTube channel. I have these on YouTube. If you want to see my face, unshaven face, make sure you go on YouTube and check that out. And most people go on YouTube just to check out Binny's beard anyways, and to see it grow from week to week. It's its own living organism. So Benny is back next week, and you'll get to see him as well. So that's it for me. I appreciate you guys listening. I appreciate hopefully this is of use to you, and I will see you guys next time. With that, this is Ramsey signing off.